Well, welcome to Off the Record, everybody. Today, we are very blessed to have one of the heroes of the faith in Queensland with us. His name is Darren Painter, and he is a part of the Prison Fellowship Australia. And why don't you, you've been involved in prison chaplaincy for at least the last 8 years now, and predominantly located in Cairns, in the prison in Cairns. Has the prison got a name in Cairns?
Yes, it's called Lotus Glen Correctional Centre.
Lotus Glen. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you landed in prison ministry, and a little bit about that?
Okay, it actually started for me back in 2005. I was in a church service and I walked out at the end of the service and just had this impression that God said, you're going to be involved in prisons one day. And freaked me out because I'd never been in prison, had nothing to do with prison. And long story short, it took another 7 years. So 2011, God really impressed upon me to get involved in prison ministry. But it was specifically Cairns. And we lived on the Gold Coast at the time.
Yeah, right.
So it was a challenge convincing my family that this is where God wanted us. But I really believe that was God's plan for my life.
Yeah.
So we upped and moved to Cairns in January 2012. The prison is located in Mareeba, so it's an hour out of Cairns. We based ourselves in Cairns just because it's a lot more populated than country town Mareeba.
Wow. And that was a volunteer role as well?
Yes, it was a volunteer role. So I went up there with, I like to tell people, if you look at an A4 bit of paper, it was a 50-cent coin in the top left-hand corner that said prison, and the rest of the paper was blank as to what my life was going to entail.
So you picked up your whole family to go to a volunteer position up in Cairns.
Yes.
And, wow, what a faithful family that you have.
Oh, yes, it was. And God just worked miracles.
Yeah.
Even in starting in the prison ministry, I remember the very first year, in May that year, we had a church in Cairns that had David Hogan come and preach. Yep. And for me, I was struggling a bit because I was finding it hard in the prison ministry. But he come up and he asked for people to come up for prayer, and I thought, I'm going for prayer, Lord. And he stood back and he said, so what are you doing? I said, I'm a prison chaplain. And he took a step back and he said, God's given me a word. Keep tending the fruit.
Wow.
That phrase kept me going for the next 7 years. It would always come back that what God was saying was just keep tending the fruit. Yeah. It doesn't matter what you face in life. If you keep tending the fruit, I will come through.
Wow. And, we were discussing earlier around the longevity of the relationships that you have with some of the guys who are in prison. Have you got any stories to tell about, the long-term shift in people's, I guess, respect for you and for the things of God?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, for the most part, most of the people that came to Christ, it was a long-term relationship, anywhere from 3 months to 3 or 6 years. There are guys that I met in the first years of 2012 that we didn't really talk about faith until 2017. Wow. And you sort of think, as a Christian, we sometimes think, oh, well, what are you doing? Get in there and preach the gospel. But it's fine to preach the gospel, but then you can turn them off. You've got to remember these blokes are in there every week. It's not like they're out tomorrow. I know I've got 7 years or 10 years because this bloke got a 10-year sentence. I've got time to walk with him and get him to that point where he understands who Christ is and what Jesus has done for him.
Wow.
But it's amazing to see how God touched lives. So I remember one particular bloke had came into prison, and a bloke come up to me and he goes, Darren, you've got to talk to this fella. He's looking to become a Muslim. I went, oh, okay, well, whatever. He said, just come and tell him about Jesus. So I sat down with this bloke and I just started to talk to him and just laid out the gospel from Genesis to Jesus. Walked him through in about half an hour, talked about the creation of the world, and then went through and finished with Jesus. And he actually looked at me and he said, wow, man, he said, I've never heard that before. He said, thank you, I need some time. I said, well, can I give you a Bible? And in the Bible, I used to carry around a New Living Translation Bible, and it had a little section in the front where you could sign your name and date when you said the prayer. And so I explained to him that, you've got this Bible, have a read about it, any questions? Is there anything I can pray for? And he said, yeah. And he had this thing that he wanted me to pray for, so we prayed. Next week I come back, and as I'm standing in what we call the fishbowl, he comes and points at me and he goes, I need to see you. And he goes, that prayer you prayed, he said, that answered the next day. This continued for 6 weeks. Every week he had a new thing for me to pray for, and every week God answered that prayer. And 6 weeks later I walked into a unit and he comes out holding the Bible up and he goes, signed my name last night, Darren.
Yeah, very
And I went,
good.
Wow, Lord, that's just amazing,
Yeah, that is amazing. Now, look, when I first started in ministry, at this church, I think it was in 2003, one of the first tasks that I was given was I needed to go down to the courthouse at Noosa every Monday morning, with we used to have a little noddy van with a cup of tea maker in the back, and make cups of hot chocolate and coffee and tea for the guys who were about to go into court.
Wow.
And I sat there as a young guy starting out in ministry, and the guys who were coming up, I was in fear, half the time, because there was some interesting stories and attitudes coming into my table demanding this and that of coffee, and I guess when I think about that, it was great for me to build relationship each and every week, and I had my regulars, hot chocolate, 4 sugars, or whatever they all were, but I'm assuming that when people are hearing about the prison ministry, they're fearful just listening to you talk about it. Is that something that you had to overcome when you went into the ministry, or were you built for it, or how does that work? Because there'll be people out there who are interested in this type of ministry.
For me, it was, I can honestly say it was God. Yes, I was scared when I went in there. I walked in not knowing what to experience. You walk in and, doors are locking behind you. You don't have control to open the doors. You've got to wait for an officer to press a button for you to go through a door. So you've got all this fear coming in, and then you meet tough men. There are some tough men in there that would just look at me and could put me on the ground, But the thing that I love about it is that, Jesus talks about, or lived his life demonstrating love. The minute I walked in there and just demonstrated that love, just showed them that I wasn't in there for myself. I'm in there because I feel that my God's asked me to come and talk to you. And when they realised that I wasn't trying to promote anything about me, that I was just there because I genuinely cared, man, the walls came down.
Wow. Yeah. And there's I always say there's a grace on our commitment. You know what I mean? So when we say yes to God in some way, there's a grace on our yes, or on our agreement with what God's up to. Would you say that for yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. God, I could almost say, I won't say it was like, God putting a shawl on me or anything like that, but I definitely can know within myself that when I started to go into the prison, God changed who I was.
Wow.
He gave me an ability to look at a person and not see their crime, but to see them as a person. Yeah. So not look at what they've done, but to look at who Jesus sees. The Bible talks about seeing people through Jesus's eyes. He gave me that ability. Because prior to that, I can honestly attest, I struggled with that.
Yeah, amazing.
And so I asked God these questions: how am I going to be able to deal with this, Lord? And he was like, well, trust me, I've called you, just keep walking. And as I kept walking, this ability just came upon me. And I look now and I get amazed, because I look at blokes and I go, no, I can't believe you did that.
Yeah. And he gives you the Lord gives you a love for people that logic can't explain, I guess.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You look at someone and you begin to see the person, the heart of a person. When you begin to listen to someone's story, you actually sit back and you think, wow.
Yeah.
This is actually a human being that's experienced so much pain and trauma in their life. No wonder they've actually stepped out and done this, or this.
Yep.
We talk a lot about the issue with drugs and alcohol. From what I've experienced, most people that I've met are using drugs and alcohol to cover a pain. They're experiencing pain from trauma in their life, and that takes the pain away. When I'm drunk, I don't think about that. When I'm on drugs, I don't think about that. I had one bloke actually talk to me. He was in his 50s, and I met him through an interesting way. I was in the prison in a unit, and I was talking to this young fella, and I was tired. It was at 4:00. I was done, but he had a sore elbow, and my Bible in me says, the Bible says, lay hands on the sick and they shall recover. I can honestly tell you there wasn't much faith, but I laid my hand on him and prayed for him. I come back the following week and I'm sitting in a unit, and bloke walks up to me and he goes, you're the healer. And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, you're in this unit last week and the young fella had his sore elbow. I said, oh yeah, I remember praying for him. He goes, he had no pain after you prayed. So we started a friendship from there. And he was just sort of talking to me saying, you know what, Darren, he said, when someone gets home from work, they've had a hard day, they have a beer to get rid of the day. I get home from work, I take some pills to get rid of the pain that I'm experiencing. And I went, wow, we really don't understand that people really are hurting in this world, and we've got the answer, because that answer is Jesus.
Yeah, amazing. So tell me, Darren, how many people are in prison right now in Queensland?
Right now in Queensland, you've got about 9,000 inmates across Queensland. That's men and women.
Yep.
We have 14 maximum security and low security prisons.
Okay, wow. And how many chaplains? How many chaplains do we have right now?
Approximately between 150 and 180 chaplains in Queensland that go into a prison at least 4 times a week.
Okay, wow. And so, you're talking to the Noosa Church right now. What would you like us to know, or how can we serve or participate or pray? What are the key aspects you'd like to, let us know about?
First would be prayer. I know for myself, prayer was a huge thing. Having prayer support from people, knowing that someone was praying for my ministry. So I had a little church down in Tassie praying for me, and if I've got time, I'll tell you this short story. So I was walking down a walkway one day, and a manager stopped me. She asked me about this bloke that she was dealing with that had, was really struggling with dealing with what he'd done to a person. And I turned around, and after a conversation, I went, "Oh, I know the bloke. Yeah, I was on the Gold Coast when that crime happened." She goes, "Would you meet with him and have a chat?" And I said, "Yeah, no worries." Now, as it turned out, that particular day as I'm driving to the prison, it was an hour's drive, but I couldn't shake Philippians 3, verse 13, where it talks about forgetting those things behind and looking forward. And I couldn't work out why I was meditating on it, but I was just meditated. It's the word of God. It's good. I'm sitting down with this bloke. She calls me up, and we end up in a manager's office talking to this bloke. He was struggling with, how do I deal with the crime that I've done? Like, I've hurt someone, Darren, and how do I can't process that. And it was good for me because I was able to tell him that I was in a church service where I heard this person give a testimony and say he'd forgiven his perpetrator. So that was great. I had that. But I was able to actually talk to him about the Apostle Paul. He was killing Christians. He was there when Stephen was stoned. And here he is. He gets touched by God, and he puts this letter together for the Philippians, and he says that we forget those things. I said, maybe Paul was saying I'm forgetting those things behind. And I was able to talk him through this, and 2 weeks later, this bloke gave his heart to the Lord.
Wow.
But I really felt that God was telling me that took place because people on the outside were praying for me and for my day in the prison. So, we have chaplains going into the prison 7 days a week. Each prison has a different day that they go in. So pray for the chaplains facing and meeting these guys.
Absolutely.
Would be first. Volunteers is another area. We run a range of programs in prisons that are, from 6 weeks through to 8 weeks long. We also do a program called Angel Tree, which is providing gifts for children of prisoners at Christmas time. And there's also the financial level of support. We've all heard of Compassion, where we sow a monthly gift to help a compassion child. We do the same. So for $15 a month, you can take the gospel to 3 prisoners a month, basically. That's another area that, if people feel led to help support.
Very good. And look, you were saying earlier that in the last, how many years have it since the statistics said that basically the prison population has doubled?
So that's from 2012. So the government put together a report last year. It was called the QPC report. And they state in there that from 2012 to 2019, I think it was, there was a 61% increase in the number of prisoners in our prisons.
Yeah. So obviously, from a financial perspective, we spoke about volunteers, that the chaplains are volunteers, but obviously the cost of producing materials and the administrative costs and all those surrounding things that it takes to have this kind of ministry. There's a cost attached to it. And people, I guess if people want to contact me at the church or the office, I can put you in touch with Darren and the organisation so that you can be involved. If people do want to volunteer their time, how would they go about that?
They can log on to our website, which is prisonfellowship.org.au.
Yep.
And there's a couple of tabs along the top which list all the different programs that we do.
Great.
And there's a volunteer tab that you can click on that and you can just fill your interest. The programs are brilliant. We've got opportunities to take the gospel of Jesus into the prison and really promote who Jesus is and what he did.
Yeah, good. And when it comes to prayer, is there a way that we can, keep tabs of, is there a mail out or something or, that we can be part of that lets us know how everybody's going, what the needs are along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, if you jump onto the website, we have what we call a prayer diary.
Beautiful.
So it's put out every week, and it just gives you, it covers 7 days, and each day it lists something that you can pray for.
Yeah.
And those prayer requests come from chaplains that will send in saying, I'm talking to this particular bloke, can you pray for him?
Yeah.
Or this lady, can you pray for them?
Great. Look, and I know some of you who are watching this right now. It's challenging you, and you know that it's challenging you because it's disrupting you. And I guess I just encourage you to don't let this moment pass without just taking some action. Whether it's to make a phone call or write an email or send the church some info, or just jump on the website now and have a look, because the first aspect of faith is engaging, is taking that one step. So we just encourage you today to act on the stirring of your spirit that's happening in you while you listen to Darren and where he's come from, what he's doing, and the amazing stories that he's been able to tell us. So we just thank you for your time, Darren.
Oh, thank you.
It's great to meet you, and we look forward to hearing more, and hopefully the church participating. We've already got one of the young men in our church participating.
Yes,
and
awesome.
we look forward to seeing more and being involved any other way we can. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite. It's great to work with churches that are keen to see what we do in the prisons.
Absolutely. Good on you, mate.
God bless.
See you later, everybody.
Goodbye.